We've got some good weather coming up. Tomorrow looks a little dicey, but then after that, it's gonna be so nice.
Fingers crossed for Easter to be nice and warm, like I say. My neighbor's magnolia tree is about to bloom.
Tomorrow looks a little dicey, but then after that, we're
gonna mute us on that other one there. So everybody can still hear me?
Yep.
All right, we're live.
What's the name of the YouTube channel, Laura? Just so I can.
It was on the notice, so you
Right.
you'll have to go to that link. So, are we all good to go? Should we get started? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Just like we did in the spring, I'd like to start by just sharing a little bit quickly with our notice. And I thought I had pulled it up, but I had the agenda pulled up, so that's my apology. And I'll just get that up real quick. We have just a very limited scope for our meeting today. I'll pull this. I'll zoom in here. So just for the record, today we are meeting the Boone County Tax Board Committee pursuant to KRS 61.826 and OAG 20-05. We'll meet on Tuesday, March 30th, 2021 at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time via video conference. This meeting format has been necessitated due to the state of emergency regarding threats to public health presented by the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting may be attended by the public by viewing the video teleconference via YouTube at www.youtube.com/channel/UCG10FGAPMAX4MKJGOLJETOA. The meeting agenda will be posted in advance of the meeting, and residents may submit a question or comment regarding any item to the Human Services Director, L. Plyman at booncountyky.org, no later than Monday, March 29th, 2021 at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. So we had received no comments of any kind, so that makes our discussion a little bit clearer and easier today. So did everybody receive a copy of the applications? Is that correct? Let me stop sharing here. Oh, I see there we go. We all received copies. Everybody has applications and was able to review them. Okay, well, and then our agenda for today, as I said, it's pretty straightforward, but I will also share that with you now. Just kidding. We'll get there. So we shared our virtual meeting requirements there already. Move this over. Just around to department recommendations for calendar year 21, and then we'll take your allocation recommendations to the fiscal court on April 13th. So we'll require those. So very simple, very quick, easy agenda, nothing too complicated, although the discussion surely won't be. We'll have some good discussion, I'm sure. So we usually like to start with, if you have any broad questions, we can start with that discussion. I can tell you that we have some availability of funds, originally around $300,000 to allocate, but I think that if the board is so moved, we can make an allocation recommendation higher than that. So you'll see that the numbers that the department is proposing, that Dylan and I have reviewed, is staying around that 300,000 number, but if the board is interested, we can certainly exceed that. And there are some, as you may have noticed, if you did the quick calculations, as a reminder, there's a requirement in each of these, the RFP for each of these applications is that the agency supplies 25% match for the funds, and a couple of the agencies only proposed a 20%. So our recommendations reflect that 25% requirement. So it's not necessarily a full match recommendation there. If that's okay with you, I'll have Dylan share his screen right now with our first kind of our spreadsheet of recommendations, and we can walk through each of the proposals to begin our discussion. Does that sound okay?
Are you guys seeing that all right?
So this is all just in alphabetical order. There's no other order to that besides this. These numbers, and there's maybe some changes from original applications and when we got our final ones out, when we had to go back and have some conversations. So we have some photos too for everybody to share. We did a little field trip last week. When you walk through these, are you comfortable with that to start? Any questions? No? Okay. So you'll see Brighton Center. I will point out here that they asked if they should do this under one application or two. One is technically for Brighton Center and the other one is technically for Brighton Properties, which as Carolyn knows, it's a separate 501c3. It's a separate board, everything, although they're closely related. That, I guess, is the phraseology there. The request from the Brighton Center was for the Recovery Center for a purchase of a van. The request amount was as listed, but you'll notice that's not quite enough of a match. It's a 20% match. If you do the 20% match, the full request would come to somewhere closer to $25,500. Brighton Properties are looking for some assistance with repair to the facility, largely related to the pavement in the parking lot and purchase of security cameras around the facility. Upon visiting the site, we realized that a portion of the original proposal included as a match for the Brighton Properties, a cement repair underneath some dumpsters. When we visited the site, we discovered that had already happened during an earlier repair. And so we discussed with the representative that it was no longer possible to include that as it had already happened. So we resubmitted the application, the proposal, removing that portion of it. So that number came down a little bit as well. The next one is a familiar agency again. All these organizations, for the most part, are very familiar to the board, perhaps with the exception of Florence Christian. Children's Home in Northern Kentucky is seeking funds for repair of their facility in Burlington. It is a residential treatment home for boys ages 12 to 17, I believe. I have to double check those ages. But for young boys, the site they purchased from the Point many years ago, it was neglected, and they are looking for funds to do a myriad of projects around the facility. They had not invested anything into that piece of it yet. That number, again, is a little bit lower than what their required projected match would be, but we can get into that here too. Florence Christian is probably the one that all three of you are probably the least experienced with, because they don't receive any programmatic funds from the tax board, but they have been a good partner with the county in various activities, specifically around homelessness services. They're located on Main Street in Florence, and along with the child care center on the campus, they years ago built the Arcadia high-rise apartments for seniors. They have started a small shower ministry in what is just a kind of a residential type shower in their administrative offices that the pastor, who was a longtime pastor there, used. And as some folks were asking for help in that area, they began to allow folks to come in and use just a small shower. They want to expand that while they do some other modifications to their campus and turn a good sized space in administrative portions of their offices into a shower and laundry ministry. And then finally, CAC is looking for assistance with funds to purchase the Maplewood property. They've been in negotiations with the fiscal court for purchasing this property to own it. They've leased the property, long-term for 10 or so years from the county to operate Head Start programming there, and approached the county about purchasing this potentially late in the fall. So they're asking for assistance to help with that purchase. So you'll see the total request listed there, a little over $570,000, which is, again, more than what we have to allocate today. Our recommendations are a little bit closer to 300,000, but we do think there is some open room to include that. And if you stop your share, do you have do you have the recommendations listed there too? I couldn't see them. It was just a big piece, so it was covered. So we have them on there. So we'll start with that. Any questions about those to begin with? Were you able to see the recommendations on that sheet? Okay.
Thank you for the brief overview of those applications. I was wondered, last applicants, the application, it looks to me in the document says, please see the attachment. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just me or overall it's a missing piece. We should not see it. I was wondered about that. It is agency NK CAC capital project application. I only see without any budget or any proposal other than main narrative part.
Let me see here. So I apologize, and I don't recall off the top of my head. We sent you just the proposal. We did not send the budget narrative.
I didn't get the budget part either.
Let me send that to you right now. Or Dylan, do you mind doing that quickly?
Sure.
The budget narrative. The only other two additions to that, as I mentioned in the email, were and I apologize for that we neglected to send that, were the 990 and the audited financial statements, which we can certainly send to you. We review those, kind of just do an assessment of the program itself, or excuse me, the organization as a whole, but we don't always send those out. We do for the tax board meetings, the full tax board meetings, but we don't do those. So if you'd like to see those, we can send those out to you
No,
also.
I just figured it was something you would cover, so I wasn't.
Yeah. No, thanks for bringing that up. I apologize. We didn't mean to exclude that. You'll want to see that budget narrative, certainly. Anything else missing on your all's end? No.
I'm curious, this is a little bit out of that questioning, but I'm curious, with the Children's Home in Northern Kentucky, have they made any improvements to that piece of property?
Yes, they built a fence around the facility when they were having a series of AWOLs that were causing some difficulties with the neighbors. They invested heavily in a fence, but I don't believe has really
Helped.
No. When we were there, and you'll see when Dylan shares some photos, they recently repaved and created some drainage in the beginning at the front of the buildings, because I guess there was some water pooling at the front of the two buildings. His explanation to us is that building was built by the Home Builders Association for the point many years ago. And what was his phraseology? It was an economy build. What did he say?
Yes, something along those lines. Yeah. Economy architecture, perhaps, was the phrase.
Something. It was they were baseline materials, builder grade kind of baseline materials, and maybe not maintained very well. So I recall when they first moved into that facility, so this is going to give you some other background. You all may remember that before CAC was at Maplewood to do the Head Start program, Children's Home was operating at their facility there, and the fiscal court made the decision to not renew that lease, but instead to share it with, to make that lease with CAC to bring Head Start to Boone County. At that time, that's when they moved to the point location, which at the time had been used as a residential home for adults with intellectual disabilities. It's my understanding, based on conversations, two things. When they first moved into that facility, they did do some modifications to the interior, and I was able to tour that at the time. I believe they did not do any further improvements to the facility, because I don't believe they were certain as to whether or not they would stay in Boone County and continue to operate. Enough to the point that at one point, one of the past chairs made a comment to Boone County administration that they were looking to divest themselves of that asset and move on. In our conversations with Rick Worth, the executive director, he seems to indicate that they plan on staying in that facility, and the deferred maintenance is now becoming so much that they can't put it off any longer. It's well, we jump into this particular piece, and Suki, for your background, the tax board and the fiscal court made the decision to no longer fund Children's Home in Northern Kentucky several years ago due to several pieces of information. The largest piece being their executive compensation rate was far outside the norm and outside of expected, what we found to be acceptable. And then the amount of money that they were investing into their facility in Devu Park, it was a $5 million facility improvement. So those two pieces together, the tax board felt, obviously you're doing fine. Your compensation seems to be, you've got compensation for an executive director over $300,000 annually for a $6 million organization. You seem to be doing okay. You don't need taxpayer dollars for that. I can tell you those things haven't changed. His compensation is still at that level, which is still disconcerting. And I think, well, I will say, I asked some questions prior to them submitting this application about their operation. I just didn't know what they were doing at that facility, but they have applied again for our programmatic funding. And their chair, or their former chair, reached out to Judge Moore, and then somebody else reached out to Judge Knockelman in Kenton County, inquiring as to whether or not they'd be eligible for funds. Because at the time that we stopped funding them, the county stopped funding them, Kenton and Campbell also stopped funding them for those exact same reasons. And in the email, I think, and Dylan, you can attest whether or not this is a fair assumption, it seems as though he just dismissed those worries, that the executive compensation and the caliber of the remodification were just, those are kind of no longer warranted. They weren't really an issue. So
yes, I would just add that this has been a sticking point for a while, and there's been no movement really on it.
So he's aware clearly of why Kenton and Boone County have not funded him, the organization, because specifically of his accelerated compensation package. So he's aware. I'm sure their board is aware. If the board chair was calling the judge executives, so then they're unwilling to change that, which I would say my personal opinion is that with that level of compensation, it seems really hard to justify that to taxpayers.
Which is why we made that decision, which obviously now we realize was a good one at that time,
Yeah.
I am curious to hear a little bit more about how respond to that email then at the time.
Trying to pull it up to see if I can show you the exact language quickly. I did not respond. Well, Judge did, I think, respond to it. He asked, the question came up was if we were going to be reconsidered for that funding. And my suggestion to Judge is that I did not think that those issues were not of concern, and that I wouldn't recommend necessarily just because of their assessment that it's okay to start considering funding again. They haven't made any changes. Nothing has changed to their system. So I was trying to see if I can pull it up for you really quickly so you can read for yourselves without our assessment into there. Give me just a moment, please. Right. Do you want to show, while we're waiting, do you want to show them the facility pictures just so you all can get a shot at understanding of what that looks like out there?
Yes, I would be happy to.
Thanks, Brian. Or thanks, Brian. Thanks, Dylan. I'm looking for an email from Brian. My brain's can't handle two names at once, apparently.
In an email earlier this week, I was referred to as Dominic, so it takes a while. Okay, so
can we call you Dominic?
If that's what you feel is best. Doesn't really matter to me. Are you guys seeing I always have trouble with the sharing of PowerPoints. Are you seeing the actual version or the weird?
It looks, I mean, it looks good to me. Capital
Okay,
Projects
yeah.
Round 2, 2021.
Right, okay,
It looks
cool.
like the slideshow, yeah.
Great. All right, so we'll just go through all of them because Chunk is kind of at the bottom, the last part. So this will give you a good look at all of them. So this is Florence Christian Church, their shower ministry expansion. These photos here are the current facilities. So there's one shower and then this sort of bathroom area, which had been previously used by a pastor at the church, and they've been sort of an informal kind of ministry here for homeless people who need a place to clean up. This is being offered to them. But that's about the extent of the shower facility.
I have a quick question. So Florence, okay, so it's on Main Street in Florence?
It's on the corner of Main and 42.
So it's not, is it, okay, so the one side is Latter-day, no, not Latter-day.
They're across the street from the Scientologists.
Scientologists, yes.
So
Okay, so they're across the street by Heritage Academy School, that area? Okay, I got it.
I believe on the other corner there's a dentist's office, so yeah.
Got it.
Yes, so this is the front room that's going to be converted into sort of a reception area. Clearly now they are using it as storage, but that door there that you see goes out to the parking lot, and there are no steps there, I don't believe. So I think it's accessible to those who may have physical disabilities. There's me and the pastor, Susan. And this is just another angle of that same room that we saw. So you can see there's a pretty decent size space there. Then on the left here is more closet storage space. So that's kind of on the opposite side of that room that we just saw, on the other side of the door. So part of the shower ministry expansion is going to be to remove the walls in this space and push out so that they can make full usage of the area that they have. This brick wall on the right side of this kind of corridor. On the other side of that is the pastor's office, which will be made smaller by this expansion. And then on the right is their current sitting room, which after someone were to use the shower, this is offered to people who just need a place to sit, kind of relax. Yes. And so that's the extent of the current facilities at Florence Christian. For Brighton Properties, their Women's Recovery Center, which is on Weaver Road, just before it passes over 75, is where that's located. Kind of in a mixed use. There's a lot of industrial activity in that area, but there's also some apartment complexes out there. So this is their current driveway. So these three pictures on either side, on the left and right side, is the driveway. So it comes downhill down into the facility. So you can see that there's some significant repairs needed to the driveway. There's the blacktop is deteriorating, and there's been just temporary patches made on some real problem areas. And then the middle is that concrete by the dumpster that we discovered had already been replaced. So will no longer be included as part of their match. So that's the extent there. And then we have the Burlington campus for Chunk. So this is their driveway back to the facility. It's about a half mile long off of, is that Idlewild Road?
Yeah.
So yes, large portions of it are just gravel. The blacktop is crumbling away. There are a lot of issues here for transportation back to the facility. Now this is new concrete once you get into the facility that had been donated relatively recently. So this is sort of a recent upgrade as you're pulling into the area. This is another angle of pretty much the same view. You can see that the house, or the building rather, on the left there is the original building to the facility, which was built in the mid 80s. And then on the right is a slightly newer facility, which was built in the 90s. This is the side door to, I believe this is the older building. So you can see on that window there, there's just rotting wood, also in the door frame. They had apparently organized volunteers to come and paint, and Sherwin-Williams had donated the paint. But when I guess sort of the advanced team came out and looked at it, they said that paint wouldn't really help given the state of decay there. So that was canceled. Here's some close-ups of the windows on the facility, especially there on the right-hand photo. You can see additional decay in the wood, pretty evident there. So on the left here are several doors that had to be boarded up. I believe for security issues was a part of it. It is just more evidence that the wood is decaying on the side. I mean, this is a pretty prevalent problem on every facet of the building. And that is all the pictures.
So there aren't people out there, right? Like they aren't, oh, they are.
Yeah, so he didn't give me a full rundown as he never committed to a number that were currently at that facility. I believe he said they were up to 17 that could be at that location, but he said it's been fluctuating. And we have heard from a lot of our residential home treatment providers that the fluctuations from the state due to COVID have been pretty dramatic. There aren't as many referrals. I have a whole different theory about, well, we have even some our essential workers that are still not really, who work for the state, who really aren't getting out into the community, in my opinion, enough. So it doesn't surprise me that some of these facilities haven't been used quite as much due to the COVID. I mean, it's portions of COVID reasonably, but otherwise. So they're there, but it looks like it's substandard position. I will share with you quickly, and then and as we discussed too, I wanted to, we have some, I pulled the language from the email. This was language shared to both Judge Moore and Kenton County. But I just pulled the language pertinent to the discussion of why the decision was in the past. I'll give you just a second to read that if you'd like.
It's an interesting sentence there. We believe that Logic Stream does not serve our counties nor Chunky well. Did the judge executive say anything about this? Did Gary say anything?
He asked for how to respond. I didn't get a follow-up from him exactly as to what his response would be. Sorry, wrong computer. This is the function of having two computers up at the same time. It takes a minute. He didn't tell me exactly how he responded, which is not unusual. I don't always get that last piece of it. I can say that, I kind of reminded him of why that decision was made, and that it wasn't just Boone County alone, that it was a Kenton and Campbell County decision also. The sentiment was the same.
This is how I would look at it if he needs any further. I mean, my recommendation would be the same as like what you guys are saying here, that, no funding yet. But my thought would be, we are privy to other organizations who do the same thing, more or less. And budgetary wise, they're within the same ballpark, meaning Catholic Children's Home, and they're paying their person, it was half or less.
I think it was,
Oh, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
Rick-
like, take that extra money, devote it towards that, and then we'll talk, but in the meantime, to me, it seems that might be excessive and not a proper use of, and what I would say is that, if I always consider that these decisions could easily be made public in any kind of election process, or, whatever, newspaper picks it up. Okay, so what are they going to say?
Right.
Let's talk about the average income for a Boone County resident. I don't think it's in the $300,000 range, which is, in my mind, wasn't he around 300,000 a year?
351.
And then he had
351.
that bonus. Remember, that was kind of what tipped the scale. I felt like, for me anyway, was that large bonus that he, for lack of better terminology, gave himself.
Yeah, right. And I'm
And
not
I just
denying.
don't- I mean,
No.
in good conscience, how do you tell our taxpayers who fund all this, well, yeah, this guy's making, almost $500,000 that year with his bonus and everything, if I remember right. I just,
Obviously, I have not seen that application the years ago, and I am wondering what was the justification for that compensation. Do you recall? Or
Well,
just a number with that item list?
So you can see this. This is fiscal year 22 application. We haven't sent these out to you yet, but you can see over here that their justification for his salary, which is this chief development officer one, this piece right here, the 351 in 2019. It was because he's also the chief development officer, which doesn't really make sense. And
That doesn't
I don't
make sense, because he's only going to have so many hours in the day to be able to do the job. And I would argue that an executive director of an organization like that should also be doing development anyway, regardless. So I understand he's probably like, well, hey, I'm covering development, we are saving that salary. But I'm wondering how he's able to work 80 hours every single week doing two jobs at once, because in theory, a development director would be working full time, right? So
there's some that are part-time, but I would imagine for that salary, you'd be working full-time.
one would think. And I believe it, and so Suki, I think that the difference for us was that, so the Diocesan Catholic Children's Home, which is DCCH, their executive director, I want to say, you all will have this number, but maybe $150,000 for his salary, maybe.
Yeah, I'll share it right here. It's 142. I'll share quickly. We're working on this, updating this for our programmatic meetings where we kind of look at the salary, but you can see here the 142.
which hasn't
and he's
changed in 3 years.
Yeah.
you
And
know.
then I will point out, and then you see the other piece too, when you look at one of the things that we consider is the gap between the executive director and the next highest paid. And his is still exceedingly high. And I don't think you noticed it. I only had it there up quickly, but it was relatively close to that number. It wasn't significantly different, as dramatically different anyway as that piece had been. And the other agency that's very similar is Holly Hill just in operation, not necessarily in organizational size, which is something else that we look at. And the reason that it's important is that executive compensation is something that the IRS can consider when allocating. I apologize. No, we just did DCCH. I'm looking for Holly Hill. I apologize. When looking at, so you can see this is a change in executive director, but still the number here. But one of the things we look at is kind of the size of the organization. And so what are their assets and their expenses and how large are they? You can also consider employee size, which isn't necessarily what we always use. We like to look at those hard numbers as far as what they're reporting out to the IRS and the audit financial statements. And I thought I had it saved on my desktop for a very, very long time. Some files that I pulled up when taking the recommendation to no longer fund children's home, but just a spreadsheet of the difference between every mental health organization and where they were, where his compensation was compared to every other executive director. And then included in that, when you look at, I was just looking at the aging applications last week, and RC Durr submits for the Boone County Senior Center. And the YMCA is a large organization, $20-30 million organization. And that executive director only makes around $280,000 a year. So still less than what, and they're twice as large.
Is that for the greater Cincinnati director? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is the, just curious, for Children's Home in Northern Kentucky, what is the annual revenue for them?
Here, I'll pull your application back up so you all can see that too.
I think we all know how this is going, but I just want to have like the backup just in case we're ever asked, to make sure that, you know, we show that we had due diligence.
So you'll see that, go ahead, sorry, Dee.
I was just going to say, coming into this, looking at that, I was like, well, because one of our other sticking points has been that they really didn't serve a lot of Boone County residents. There was not ever a large number of Boone County, you know, children that were served. And I thought, well, okay, so here we are finally in Burlington, in Boone County. So maybe it's time to be, you know, reevaluate things. But it's just so hard, you know, I just have a hard time with it.
It's hard to ignore.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and we'll
I
share
really
that.
was coming in more with an open mind this time with that than I felt like I had in the last couple of years.
Me too.
But now I've got the same, you know, bad taste in my mouth again.
Well, while we were there and meeting, you know, Rick was very happy to share with us, and I don't remember if you know the percentage, Dylan, that all of their outpatient clients, that so many of them were from Northern Kentucky. But when you look at, and they have an outpatient facility in Main Strasse on 5th and Philadelphia down there. And they do, you know, therapy, different kind of therapies and things like that. And so that in of itself, by the nature of what it is, will be providing more services to Northern Kentucky residents. He was not able, or he did not share the number of Northern Kentucky residents that are in their residential treatment program. Again, that is something that goes across the system that just traditionally, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell children don't necessarily end up in our residential treatment homes for a variety of reasons. So we do still wind up serving a lot of kids from around the state at these facilities. He did say that he is hoping to offer some kind of programming with Boone County schools as far as doing some outpatient treatment at that Burlington campus, but they haven't done that yet. I don't fully understand how they'll do that particular piece of it, but I would have to say, if you're looking just at that residential treatment piece of it, just because it's located in Burlington does not mean that it's Boone County students, Boone County children. And to be clear, that's not just Children's Home. That's Holly Hill, that's DCCH, that's all of them have that same kind of a problem. Not problem, it's just the system.
It's the dynamic of how it is.
Right.
Yeah. For DCCH, what is their revenue? So theirs is 10.6 for Chunky. What is DCCH? I'm just writing these things down to justify.
Sure. And then I would also point out, yeah, that's their total net assets, including all other facilities, but their revenues for the year, I mean, are much, much less than that. So what they're bringing in and out each year.
I didn't even read that.
Well, I would say that they look at both of those. So that's going to be including their properties potentially and things like that, because I do not believe that Children's Home has a separate properties board that it's all just under one. So including their foundation kind of funds, they do have a bit of a foundation fund, but you're talking about actual revenues and expenses each year. This is what you're looking at. So, and then I'll pull DCCHs back up again, just for you all to see. So again, about the same,
Mm-hmm.
both in the revenues and the expenses numbers, and then also with that total asset piece. And
Yeah, it's very similar.
oh, good gosh.
Well, and they weren't $2 million in the black, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they spent their revenue and expenses match is what I'm trying to say.
And so you can see that
Holly Hill's
Hill's smaller.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay.
I need to close my email. Our HR sent out a trivia, and apparently everybody is replying all with the answers. So just got, I don't even know what the question was, but it was apparently ordinance 112.05 or something was the answer. So I think in stepping back and having that discussion about children's home, because we have had that long history with what that organization and that recent issue with them. And I will also say, for Suki's benefit, at the time, their defense was, besides Rick's dual role, that they needed to have the renovation of that size at their facility to attract the donors. And I think that the thought process was on for the tax board and for the fiscal court was, if that's your decision, if that's your game plan, is that you want to attract donors of a certain caliber, fantastic, go raise all your money and spend it how you want to spend it, but you don't necessarily then need taxpayer dollars to do so also. So I think that was a piece of that consideration. In looking at the funding purpose, I think we set this up for a couple of, the fiscal court wanted these funds to go into the community for a couple of reasons. The first being that we didn't want to sit on a reserve of funds that weren't out there in the community, because these were designed to be out helping our community. The second is that we set it up this way in a way to kind of increase assets within our community, whether that is ability to access different services or expanding services in the county is one of the primary functions of how we saw that. So when we're thinking through these application processes, is this expanding a service or expanding access to a service or bringing services to Boone County? That's one of the things that Dylan and I try to do. We always really want to bring those services to Boone County so that our residents don't have to travel down 75 to get the services that they need. And then the other piece that I want to ask you all to consider too, this is a very new program. You know, it's our third round, but only our second year really, is understanding how we want to approach recurring applications, or not recurring applications, but applications from the same organizations. We have 2 on here from Brighton Center, and our recommendation right now is to fund those. Brighton Center writes very good applications, very good proposals. They're very good at doing that. They're good partners with the community. So they have been getting funding from us. They've gotten funding both rounds already from the original capital fund and from our second year. So if we did this one, it would be another piece there. I'm not saying that's a fact that we need to exclude them for any reason, but just something to consider as we move forward. What do we want to set a precedent at this time? Is it not something that we're so concerned with if we have the availability of funds and the need is there? But something in your minds to kind of consider as we move forward. Does that make sense?
I bet that each round have application, quantity of application may vary. So, yes. And also the set the budget is there, like 300,000 or a little bit more to that. So it depends on the round conditions may differ, but also equality for other agents to be able to fund and not just solely one particular one the agency go to. So that's going to be a good discussion too. And also right now, maybe a little bit challenging to determine, because each round application, how many applications we will receive it. So probably maybe we needed to discuss when a time comes before finalizing their recommendation, how we wanted to prioritize the agencies. Is there something that we have to take a turn if the one particular agency get the funded this time, maybe other maybe others. So something that I think that can be a little more open discussion needed to be taken in place for that situation. That's my view.
I agree. And I think, when looking back in the past, different years, it like the priority of it, is certain years, like for a while there, the heroin was such a big issue that became like, it seemed like a lot of what we were talking about was for addiction services. Now, I mean, I don't know, I don't do your job, but as a person who lives in Boone County, I feel like the homelessness seems like a bigger thing now. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's taken kind of front and center to the issue. So, I mean, maybe that becomes part of our priority to, that we kind of look and see what's happening around us and try and solve the bigger issues.
I agree with you totally.
And also, as an applicant and agency side point of view, if I am writing a proposal to be hoping to get funded, or agency would like to know what our court funding mechanism, what's the priority this particular time of application, so that some agency may not, less likely, they know before even they consider applying for it. So I see that as a little bit of a different angle too, as applicant side of then this round they are focusing on homeless proposal. Something that if we needed to let them know ahead of time, as an applicant, like to see the benefit of it so that they can wait, or of course, some agency anyway just apply for it and see how that goes. But I don't know how we as a committee will handle that part. I see that it's a benefit if we just call for proposal with those things that we are aiming for at this time. And I think that that's really decent communication with applicants so that they know what to expect.
Yeah, I agree. And I should say that taking into consideration that there's historically with the first round of funds, the first round of allocations, just for all of your benefits, when we, because we've kind of done this differently each time. We had a subcommittee the first round, and then I think the second round we had a second, although I don't know if both of you all were in that or not. The first round, we did allocate nearly all the funds. We had a nice response from the community. The second round in the fall for this calendar year, we've received very few applicants, and that's the reason behind doing a second round of this. So getting these out there. So it's going to be that balancing point, right? We want to make sure if we have the funds, we can allocate them where needed, but also having your level of oversight. So I think those are all excellent ideas. Do you want to go through and talk about, do we want to finalize children's home? Do we feel comfortable with that? You want to put a pin in that, come back to it and talk about some of the other applications first? How do you all feel?
I'm fine with finalizing that. I mean, does anybody feel like we should fund them? No, I don't either.
Due to, of course, maybe a missing piece of it, but one thought that I have is that what if we can suggest for an adjustment as an improvement for us to reconsider it? Of course, maybe don't have it to be this time, but in the future, if they wanted to apply for it, then we could still provide some improvement for the application for us to reconsider it. And I think that that's a pretty normal practice to do that. Of course, so we can make a decision if we could, but also at least we can provide some of the consideration that if they reapply for it, those are the improvements needed to be made. That's a kind of one of many thoughts on that part. But for now, it looks like it has not much adjustment that had made it, and also our decision justification is still questionable for that. So I respect that view because some of the justification was not clear when I just see it on the screen that you showed to me for that items. So we still needed to get some clarification on that, but still we could make a recommendation that for the future application improvement for that piece, maybe they can benefit. So it looks like it's not a programming expansion. It was a renovation. That's what I see it. And also within 3 months that they can report back to us because a construction can be done within a 3 month. So it was clear to me for that manner. But other than that, it's a lot of personnel and then the expansion piece that is a little bit surprise to us and to me too. So that's what I see it. So I respect your view on that part, but still we can provide some of the improvement suggestion may benefit for them. Of course, they can make their own decision and determination if they want to reapply for it.
And I think what I've heard is that the concerns of the tax board remain those issues regarding executive compensation, funding within the organization as a whole, access to available funds within the organization is what we've discussed as being the problems so far, the concerns with it. If I look at the application itself, my other concern is that they have perhaps sat on this property without making the investment into the repairs needed with the thought process that they were going to move away from the property. And now they're coming to the county and saying, we want some funds to help fix something that we didn't fix along the way. So those are what my perceptions of this are. I can tell you that the facility definitely needs improvement, but Dylan and I think we could attest to that completely. The overall the level of what they're requesting is exceedingly high. I think they're asking for a significant amount of funds for repairs for a building. When you consider that for these two properties, it's this, and for their facility at Davao, which was basically most of the improvements were in their main property. The main building was $5 million of improvements. And they're going to put in $300,000 to make these improvements is a piece of it. So that is, I think, what I had heard is a piece of it. I'm sorry, what I had heard is your concerns remain regarding this executive compensation and the renovations, the same as they were for the other programmatic pieces. Is that clear? Is that where our concerns are? Okay.
And my concern too would also be how many Boone County kids would be helped by it. It's a Boone County tax, and I'm all for helping people throughout the state, but that's not our purpose with this particular amount of money.
I agree.
And again, to reiterate, I agree with that. He says they're potentially looking at building a partnership with Boone County Schools to do some outpatient there, although he wasn't clear as to what that number would be or how that would happen.
I'd love to see that, and when that happens, I'm happy to rethink.
Same.
Yeah.
This feedback is helpful, and I'll certainly share this with them because I'm certain that they will ask for it. So
yeah.
Suki, just to let you know, in the past, and why I think that this is important that we do kind of do our due diligence with this, and you're right in making sure that we put forth recommendations going forward. I received a phone call from their board, someone that is on their board that I work with, but was a client of ours after our recommendation came down, wondering why we chose to do what we did. So I kind of had to have my my facts in order to be able to explain what our thinking was through it. It was a surprise that I got that phone call. But just to let you know, apparently it's known, our names are known for who being on this board. And so that hence, I just wanted to let you know, just in case you get a similar call.
I think that's
Thank you.
a good note. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was kind of a surprise. That's and for further clarification, that's not really very common for our tax board. Of course, you're publicly appointed and you're put out there, but at the same time, most of the time, if anybody has an issue, they come and talk to our office or go directly to the fiscal court. Because as you know, my cat just walked in my room too here. It's because, as you know, the all of these recommendations go to the fiscal court, and so the final decision is the fiscal court. Now they're going to rely on you for your input, but it's all fiscal court related. So the fact that they came, yeah,
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
So I assume that whatever we make as an agreed decision, maybe at the end of the today's discussion or afterward, I expect to have a common agreed piece, that information, so that I will be prepared if anyone reach out, then we as a group can send a consistent message. Should I expect that?
That's a good point.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea, just because, I mean, really, this is probably our third year at least that we've turned them down for funding. And so, yeah, we want to have a line as to why we're doing it, what our justification was, so that it doesn't seem like we're just being mean.
Well, if they came to you, Carolyn, and obviously have reached out to Gary, I think that, I would expect that, they're going to want more answers, in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, the common message is so they're not confusing, or because meaning can be different to people. So I would prefer to having common consensus answer to any citizens asking for that. And I think that they have a right to ask for those questions. And I want to make sure that we as a committee can send out the consistent message to the person who wanting to get the feedback.
Yeah, good point.
I like that. It's an excellent idea. We'll draft something up to capture this conversation and send it out for you all for your review and verify that it's accurate. And if we're approached by them at that point, then I will share it with Judge and share it with them so they can have that availability. So it'll be in writing and it will be clear as to what it is. Is that okay with you?
That is good. And also because at least my view is that still building a trust relationship with our citizens in our community. So I think that piece will be really enhanceful for people that, yes, we see that and come up to that decision with respect for them, and also the future relationship with them too. So that will be very helpful.
I'll put together a document and I'll have it out to you guys by the end of the week.
Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you.
All right. Do we want to discuss? At some point, I want to talk to you all about your focus on homelessness. You guys are touching my own heart. I have to say, it was your own work around and approving the outreach program from Welcome House and piloting it in Boone County. I'm always so proud that we had that piece going. So kudos to you all for being on the front lines of that. But we're working on that so much on stuff in that in the background, and hope to keep doing it here soon, but we can fill you in. But do you want to talk about Florence Christian next? That's probably your least familiar organization because we don't have any other kind of programming with them, excuse me. So Dylan, do you mind sharing that recommendation piece again, just as a reference? I'll say that we initially put this in there, we were kind of sticking around that 300,000 mark, but like I said, I think there is an availability if we want to go higher than that, to maybe do a full funding for this project. So Susan Diamond, who's the Reverend there, has been a great partner. They've done a lot of different work throughout the years. The organization has, we have an annual homeless count that happens, and early on they let us use their activity center as a base before it became too much of a conflict with the daycare they have on site. But they've done the shower ministry. They helped support our spring homeless sheltering that we did in the hotel last year with the COVID pandemic, when we couldn't get folks into shelters, wasn't really sure where we needed folks to be, wanted to give them access to clean water and things like that. They financially contributed some funds to that project. So they were actually in on it, supporting with their own income. They had purchased a building in Union, and they were considering expanding to Union, moving their facility, but after some discussion had sold that property and decided that they really just want to reinvest in Florence. It's their mission to welcome radically, is their phrase, which I really endeared to. I love that piece of what they do. But they do a weekly food pantry from the Free Store Food Bank of their sites, of fresh produce to the community there. And then they have their shower ministry. The shower ministry started, I want to say on the down low. They started letting a couple of folks come in and taking a shower in this small shower space, as you saw. And then it grew a little by little. They started selling, as things do. And they're doing about 40 people a month now, they say. Do you mind actually stop sharing that, Dylan, and pulling up those pictures again, just to give another picture of it. So they've decided they want to expand this. They had been in discussions with this, and I will say that we have a homelessness task force in the county. It's a group of fiscal court folks. The city of Florence has representation. We have different representation from our providers: Brighton Center, Welcome House, Florence Christian, Mary Rose, Boone County Schools, the Sheriff's Department, who are talking on we've come up with some issues and some information around it and around the homelessness issue. And so we're on the next steps of that. What does that look like? Because of that, we had a winter sheltering program set up for this year. And so this is they've participated in this, and they're kind of a key integral piece. So they want to know where they are in this process. So this is, like Dylan was saying, was their current space really limited as to what they could do. Would you mind going to that other space again? They are planning to use this entire space. And now this, as he said, it goes out to their parking lot, which to the right here, it faces Main Street. And so that behind us, they're going to take out and put, it's a large space. I'm not really good at square footage piece, but it's a good size space. So they'll be putting showers here on the left side and expanding it back into taking a cinder block wall. It looks like brick on this side, but it's cinder block on the other opposite end of it. And they'll be going into an office space there. That's where their showers will be. They'll also, we get back one please, Dylan. They'll be putting laundry along that back wall there. And then go back again, please. And I didn't hear. So Dylan explained all of this. I heard a little bit what I was looking, and then they'll be doing a reception area here. Two concerns with this project that we have. We want to verify that the zoning is compliant with how they're currently zoned. And we've put that question into them and haven't gotten that finalized yet. If the board were to agree to recommending funding, if we hadn't heard back from them, we would put that into a contract to verify that it was compliant with zoning. We're very sensitive to our relationship with Florence and how we're working through the homelessness issues. And we don't want to step on any toes with that. The other piece is that with going from operating for 40 a month to 75, which is their proposal, if they make these expansions, the current system is just manned by their administrative assistant who works in the office, Melissa. She lets folks in a couple at a time and they can take a shower and charge their phones and things like that. But if it's going to be a bigger operation, how they're going to do that. So they're hoping to partner with some of their nonprofit partners, Brighton Center, Welcome House, things like that, maybe some of the churches in the area. And I have asked them to start getting that lined up, because if that's the other concern, is how is this going to be operationalized? Because to go from 40 to 75 is a big chunk. And I don't know that somebody who's doing administrative work in the office is going to have the capacity to do all of this here. That being said, we don't have any other shower or laundry really facilities in the county. You could take a shower at the truck stops or use a laundromat, but those all do cost money. This is a nice central location for a lot of folks who are visiting Mary Rose and can get cleaned up before they have to head back out, if they do have to head back out. The other piece that I like about this, it is an investment in funding, but if we are ever to the point where we can do some kind of permanent sheltering facility, the size of it isn't so large that it would make it obsolete. It's, 2 laundry facilities, a couple of showers. It's not, an entire building dedicated to shower and laundry. So they have made a lot of commitments to working with the population. They've done this work. Our recommendation is to fund it. If the tax board is so interested, I think we can make a case to fund the full project, but I would leave that up to you all. Any thoughts?
My thought on it is, I think it's a great idea. I think it's necessary. I'm glad to hear that you mentioned the city of Florence in it. I would talk to them. I know that they have some ideas of renovating Main Street. And so it would be my thought to talk to them and work with them. I'm sure if on this homelessness board or committee, there are representatives from Florence, then that they can get their opinion heard there. It's not like it isn't a problem. I mean, people need showers, they need to clean their clothes, and they need to charge their phones. So it isn't that. It's just, I think in the long run, it's, how can I say this? Like, here's how I look at it. Like, you know how Pike Street in Covington became that, and now it's not. And things are getting shuffled and moved away because development is coming in, which we could argue one way or the other, whether it's right or wrong. But I think in the end, we want to make sure that we're working with the city to make the investment, if it is, a couple $100,000 in the right place before we make that investment. That would be my thought. I think it's a great idea, and you're right, that's where people are, but and you're right, like it's just a couple of showers and laundry. So even if it becomes something different later on, no big deal.
Sure. And I know that your concern is larger than the specific right now zoning piece, but I will say that I do have a voicemail that I received while this meeting was happening from Reverend Susan. So I will have that information for you as soon as this meeting is over.
Would you mind, you can stop your screen share. Would you mind check that and let us know?
Yeah, I will.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
And I agree when you talked about how a couple years ago we were dealing with the heroin crisis. I do think the homelessness is a forefront issue, especially in Florence right now. It's evident every time you drive through the city on every street corner, and I think it's a great project. I think it's a great idea what they're doing. And I'm fully supporting it, but I understand what Carolyn's saying, and she makes a great point. I understand that too, but
I see that also that sustainability for that, and I see has to be a long term. We want to serve this through this kind of a program for our community. I see my justification say, yes, I would love to consider for funding this application. Number one is that they show the ratio about 30 individuals per week they serve, according to the application it says. And also they have a justification that they have a strong relationship with the Northern Kentucky Homeless Shelter because it's miles away, transportation will be a barrier, and I see that. And on site at the church has those expansion of those programs for people. To me, 30 people per week is a pretty reasonable for us to consider. Mm-hmm. And I think that they may expect more people if they have a decent and facilities available to serve them through their ministry. In a long run, I like to take Carolyn's point of view. We needed to find a way to bring some little bit more tangible program for our city. So that's my view, and I agree with your discussion, and I like to consider for funding this application.
Yeah, so sorry, I had you all on mute for a second, so I apologize for missing that bit. From the pastor at Florence Christian, she had a conversation with their architect, and the architect has not yet heard back on the zoning front specifically. With regards to the laundry piece, from a zoning perspective, the architect believes that that's not going to be considered a new service since they already do have laundry on that site. They're just purchasing more. They're expanding it, but it's not a new service. They're already, it's not a laundromat. They are simply washing clothes, which they already do at that location. So that part should not pose any problems, in the opinion of their architect.
We'll make sure we get that finalized too, to verify that piece of it. So I think those are all excellent points. And you're right, Suki. I was going by my memory, which I should never do if I have the numbers right in front of me. It was, you're correct. The number's 30 showers a week for 45 individuals a month. They hope to expand that to 72 showers a week if they increase this this number. We could put a pin in this. We could move if you're interested in funding this. I'm thinking as we walk through. I think it's a good point.
I think it's a good thing to fund. I'm just going to go out and say that. And I think it's a good thing to fund. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I think that we have to, and this is probably not our role as a committee, but it's more of a larger perspective of what is going to happen with the homeless people in Florence.
Mhm.
Where will they go? How will they survive? And how do we strike the right balance between economic development in the city so that it doesn't overwhelm it? What we don't want is for the city of Florence to turn into a spot that people, businesses don't want to go to or whatever, because it's turning into a homeless place. And I think that there's some of that that's already starting to happen, whether we like it or not. And, so I think that is probably a bigger issue, and it probably is not for our committee. Like this, I mean, if we're being asked, do we want these people to have showers and laundry? My answer would be absolutely. But the bigger issue of where are these people going to go in the Boone County area, to me, is like a beating drum. Like, I hear that there's a large homeless camp in what used to be Marydale that's there by Turfway Park, and that there's also some homeless people kind of behind like Airport Ford in that area. So I'm sitting here going, okay, how do we solve that so that these people can survive, the city survives? What's the answer? And that is not our job. So my vote would be to fund it. And you might as well fund it in full, because I mean, it's not like these people, we're not going to solve that issue of that problem like anytime soon. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it, is that this is a greater issue for politicians and other community minded people to look at as a whole rather than us.
Yeah, I think it's a worthy question to ask, and it's part of what we've been talking about for a long time. Things just take a while to kind of work through processes and understandings, and I think we're at the cusp of some really incredible breakthroughs. I think we've already done some really incredible breakthroughs. We've housed way more people than we've ever housed in a winter in Boone County this past winter, and I think provided some really life-saving services. Our winter sheltering program sheltered 2 elderly individuals who were really critically in need of care, and that Welcome House team was able to get them into Florence Park. They went straight to a nursing home after being in the hotel. So, we really are doing some great things. Your point about location is well taken, and I think something to consider. And I think it's part of the larger conversation that we continue to have. My suggestion would maybe be, at this point, if you find this a worthy application based upon the merits of the application, but are concerned about what Kirk Kavanaugh would refer to as maybe the small p politics of location and how it fits into the bigger system, is maybe let that fall to the fiscal court if they feel like it doesn't need to be at that particular piece of it. Does that maybe sit better with you all? And what we could do, and we can have some conversations, is just to have, so we don't want to, we've been cradling our relationship. We're very excited about our relationship with the city of Florence. We're hopeful for what we can do. We don't want to work outside that boundary at all. They're aware that Florence Christian has been doing shower ministry, so it's not like it's a brand new service. It certainly would be an expansion of that service. So there's a potential for increasing, just activity in that area. But I would also say too, we have homeless in Boone County. We've had homeless in Boone County. You're right. There are lots of camps. And our hope is to continue to provide services so that we can provide access to intervention and services for folks when they're ready and they can have it. So if they don't take advantage of it, that's their choice. But the service and the opportunity is there, is kind of where our current approach is, right?
Does this also provide bathrooms? So that, I mean, I realize it's a shower, but let's say you don't need a shower, you just want to go to the bathroom, because I know that was becoming like public restroom type issues were a problem on Main Street in Florence.
She didn't specifically address that, I don't think. Do you recall anything, Dylan?
I don't recall anything specific. I do believe that at least that their facility there is large. They have a huge campus in that area. And so I can't imagine that they wouldn't let someone use the restrooms that are already there. So, with the expansion, you might have to think about demand. However, I mean, there are restrooms in their building that I'm sure would be available for use.
And if you're talking about non-pandemic times, this is right around the corner from Florence Library, which is often used too. So there's access to public bathrooms. That was our concern in the spring, is really that there was such limited access to toileting facilities, hand washing facilities, shower, with the closure, that we felt that it was so necessary to provide those options for sheltering. So I think that that's not always an issue, but at least potentially not during those peak times when it's probably after hours. If it's an issue, it's after hours or on the weekends when this potential program may not be open at either, though. So it may not remedy that particular part of it. But then Mary Rose is open too, so it's right there too. So I think that would be my recommendation. We can certainly check in, but my recommendation is if you're comfortable with this proposal, that we vote on this proposal, and we can leave it up to the fiscal court to make that decision as to whether or not that political aspect of it is something that they want to pursue.
I'm good with that.
Yep.
You're good. So are you comfortable? Do you want to do the whole program? Or I think our original recommendation was just a smaller portion based upon, what we thought was expected capacity within the allocation number.
Our original recommendation is $142,000.
And the request amount is $181,461.
Yes.
And 75 cents. We'll round that up. We're not doing 75 cents. We got to round this. We're not going to do a dollar at the end. It's going to be.
Yeah, they can buy us a gumball to pay us back at the border.
I would recommend, I rarely whenever say to do more than what they ask, even for rounded numbers. Could we say 181,000 even? And that would be $461 to be left off there. Or would you all be comfortable with that particular piece?
Yeah, sure.
I think they would be overjoyed even without that $461,000.
$461, you mean?
$461, thank you. Yes, not 461,000, yes.
I think they'd be overjoyed if we gave them 461,000.
They're considering an expansion on their activity center, going up in elevation. They'd be really happy, I think, then. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Thanks, ladies. Anything in particular strike your fancy, or you just want to go with what's on the top of my pile?
Top of your pile.
All right, children
And
are
I should
the,
say too, that Brighton Center Properties, I am on the board. So I should recuse myself from that conversation. So I want to, make sure that I'm on the I'm opening it up for that.
appreciate the heads up and the awareness. Thank you. We'll take you, we'll let them, so now we know when she's going to be quiet about that particular discussion piece. How about the Community Action Commission? That's just I think I was in reverse in my file here. So were you able to receive the budget narrative and look at that? We can pull it up if not, if that helps out. And again, I apologize for that oversight. So what they're looking at this facility, as we mentioned, we're coming close to the end of their lease with the county, and there were some federal funds available for renovation of the facility. If they owned it, they felt like it would put them in a better position to access federal funds if they owned the facility. So they approached the county about considering selling it. The county was interested in that option due to the age and some needed repairs within it. It's a great location from a perspective of how the county's campus is. It's very close to the county's campus, but the facility itself has been used for a lot of children's homes. It's just been really children's functions. So it's been really heavily used. The roof was damaged during the Hurricane Ike and the other hurricane that came up through the way. There's some roof damage there. That's going to be some pretty costly. There's some electrical issues that they want to upgrade. So there are some pretty significant facility upgrades need to happen. And if the county, in lieu of having to do that themselves, if they have an interested buyer, potentially that could make sense. Head Start has been doing really well there in the county. They've done a fantastic job with it. It stays enrolled at capacity. They're hoping to expand it to an early Head Start too, which would be for children under age 3. The piece though, to let you all know, is that they do purchase this, if this is agreed upon by the fiscal court, which is, there's an indication that it might be, that it should be happening, is that they do not want that the county would have the first refusal if CAC chooses to sell in the future. Because of the location of the campus, the county would have the first right. And then if they decline that right, it would have to go to another government or nonprofit agency. So it's going to stay in kind of the public use arena regardless. And for those of you who aren't familiar with where it is, again, off Idlewild, kind of back that way, between the fairgrounds and next to our public works department, and where the shelter is going to be. I've honestly not been to the animal shelter. I've been in the county 11 years and never been to the animal shelter. So in that campus area there, but it's a good sized facility. And so they are looking for the purchase of that, and they are looking for some funds to help purchase it. And then they feel that this would help them be more competitive to get this federal grant to do the renovations necessary for the facility. So we think it does kind of meet those needs as expanding services within the county with the potential expansion of Head Start and improving the current facility that's already an asset. It will stay in that public use zone, as we said before. Any thoughts on this? And I can explain some of this budget, which I think is a little goofy, but anyway.
I think it sounds fine. I mean, Head Start, Deanna, probably you see the effects of that, I would think, within the school system.
I think it's a great program. I think that the school system has been really trying to help with the Head Start program too. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I think it's a no-brainer.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Ziggy.
This proposal, those program, because I'm looking at the goal for the outcome for the program, I assume either virtual and the face-to-face, right? Does that matter?
They had been face-to-face. They had fallen under the guidelines that they had been operating in person. I don't know for certain. I can ask them if they're doing virtual or if they're doing, are you saying you see it somewhere that says virtual?
I do not see that.
Okay.
And I only assume it's just a face-to-face.
I would think with that age group, it would be the virtual would be very difficult.
I think originally in the spring they were doing some. I know Brighton Center in particular with their hippie program. We're still going out and doing some kind of out the door kind of activity. I think they did that originally, but I'm 95% sure that they're operating within their facility. We can walk there pretty easily from our office, and there were several school buses out there the other day. So I think that they're still there, but I'll check.
And my strong impression is that it's just a facility and face-to-face interaction. That's what I see on page 4 that describe about renovation piece, and then the 72 children annually they serve, and also the families of those children. So it looks like the impression is that they only solely focusing on a face-to-face, and they really care for how many people serve in that building. Okay. Of course, I can be biased because this program, this is great. This age children need a lot of coaching and a lot of assessment to be evaluated. And I think more is better for our community and particularly this population. So yeah, I'd love to consider this application to be funded.
I agree. I think anytime we can put money into our, this is really our youth, you know, to try to get them a good start, and the children that they serve need that extra to try to, you know, come in. I mean, it just helps them develop a successful entry into public school and, you know, and all that. I think it's great. So
it benefits our future. So I go for this.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say.
It's a great investment.
Right. You know, there's so many of them that start kindergarten so far behind already that if we can help that at all, it'll, you know, it just keeps paying it forward.
I think, you know, when we were able to bring this, when the fiscal court helped facilitate bringing this to the county, I think what an asset happened, you know, at the time. It was controversial because of ending that lease with Children's Home, but it's such an asset. So, all right. So it sounds like you are open for that.
Our county services. I mean, you know, it's such a great location for what it is and where it is. And
you know, I would never have thought that based upon like it's not on a transportation. You know, a lot of times when you think about folks who are, you know, in low income or high poverty areas, you want to be on a bus line, and it's not. But they have transportation through the system, so it makes it easier to get. So yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that, but it has worked out really well for them. So we're good with the $100,000 then?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm curious, did I miss that the budget, they didn't request for any technology, right? Although
No.
meeting they don't, and I'm just thinking, because even, you know, those, even face-to-face those days, this generation need the technology in classroom too. So I just kind of thought about that too.
You know,
they need more.
Yeah, we can ask them. We can mention that in the future if they're interested. No, they didn't ask anything like that. I think they're really concentrating on trying to get this down. Well, the one thing I'll say on their budget narrative, I mentioned it. I think it's a little, goofy. Is that they put what the counties, what we were offered as an analysis on our price. The county was at that 585 there at the top. And then, so they got a grant when they got the first lease of $395,000, which they put down. They kind of made a third column here. It says annual amortization of the federal interest, as though that decreases the value of the property, but it really doesn't. That's what we didn't get that. CAC got that for the property. And so anyway, I think that's kind of a goofy thing to include. They just where they put these numbers at, but you know, I think that anyway, so you can see their proposal and what they would include. And wanted to share that. So we're at $100,000 for CAC done. Okay. Let's chat about the Brighton Center, the van first, and then we can go to the properties piece if that's all right with you. Now, this is the one I want to touch base with you. If you all remember, I think you will remember the original calendar year 21 funds coming through. We did receive an application from Brighton Center, the Recovery Center, for the purchase of technology for the facility. So the purchase of computers and some like wireless access points and things like that. And the recommendation was to fund, and the fiscal court did fund that. So to my knowledge, they've purchased those items and they have been installed. We haven't actually been billed for those yet, but I expect that would happen anytime. But just so you know, this current calendar year cycle, Brighton Recovery Center did receive funding for capital funds from the fiscal court. This is maybe a little bit of my fault. I'm not on the Brighton Center board, but I had been on the program committee this year, and in a conversation with Anita, who runs the center, and this has been a long time concern of mine. I don't know if you all are familiar with where the recovery center is. There are no sidewalks there. She identifies it as rural. It is not a rural facility. It is not rural. It's maybe industrial, but it's slightly outside the Florence line.
The proper term.
Yeah. But it's not rural. But there are no sidewalks along the road. And part of the program is that women trudge to get to their meetings. That's part of the program, which means they walk along the side of the road. This won't alleviate all of that. But for the times when it's raining and things like that, or they need to get to other doctor's appointments and things, they would use a van. It's a passenger van. It's not a commercial 15-person van or anything like that. This is one where they didn't quite understand the 25% match. She included 25% of what she was requesting from us, which is a little bit less than the actual total project cost. So our recommendation is to do the purchase of the van at $25,500, and then we had to do the remainder to purchase the rest of that if they so chose. It's a good program. It always gets really ranked really high. The state of Kentucky has several recovery programs across the state. This one is always one that gets ranked really, really high as far as effectiveness in the project. And I think we're lucky to have that in the county. Any thoughts?
I'm good with the 20 with your proposal. I think Brighton Center does an amazing job, and they're always, I mean, anywhere you go, they're always in the community. They're always, trying to make everything better that they can, and so I'm on board with it.
It's a strong community partner agency that I often hear it, and very, very strong program that they do. And I don't know without their program how we as a community can function. So I'm really thankful their operation and the program wise. Those proposal I'd like to support to consider.
Carolyn, do you feel comfortable responding to this since it's not the properties, or you feel like it's outside of that too?
I will support anything Brighton Center does. So yes, 100%.
With an exclamation point.
Yep.
All right, we'll put that down for $25,500 then. I think they should be happy. All right, the final one is the Recovery Center repairs. And Dylan, do you mind updating our spreadsheet with these numbers as we go through, since I'm doing it by hand and calculating it?
I was
Okay,
also
thank
doing
you.
it by hand to update later. So yes,
If you don't mind doing it, so we'll have the total at the end.
yes.
All right, so this is, this might be another one. Would you mind pulling up the pictures again too, Dylan? I think just to show you guys again where these are at.
Yes.
As a reminder, again, this is just as we're talking about different projects. This was a program, the Brighton properties received funding, our very first capital fund cycle for the repair of the building at Shelby Street. Again, very close to Main Street in Florence. It was an old Social Security office or post office?
Social Security.
Yeah. And it had a federally installed door on the interior that was broken for a long time, and that was fixed. Several roofing projects were fixed, and some of the exteriors. Now we got your notes slide, not the actual slide, but It'll be fine. It's all right. So I will say that the property here is, the driveway is pretty rough. Maybe not as rough as Children's Home, but it's in not great shape. The facility itself is only 12 years old. Yeah. And so
I don't know if it's even that old. I thought you said
maybe
09.
11.
Oh, wait, that's 12, huh? It's 2021.
So it's 12 years old. Tony Herms is there, who's the director of their properties, said he thinks that maybe just because of the way this is. So this is off of, oh my gosh, what road is this?
Weaver.
Weaver, thank you. It's off of Weaver, and it's a pretty steep hill to go down, and then you can see it's kind of rounding a bend. He thinks that perhaps because of the way of that, just the geography there, and it hits down. You'll see the picture on the right side there with that big patch is already, that the delivery trucks that come down, Rumpke trucks, things like that. They do their center table catering out of that facility, so you get some traffic in and out of that facility. I think also potentially when he expects that maybe when they built the facility, they were trying to be as economical as possible, and maybe didn't invest quite as much as they should have in the driveway piece.
There's a second patch also up at the top on the left-hand picture. So
the other piece that they're including with this, the other big piece too, besides that driveway kind of, it's like standard kind of driveway repair. It's the pulling out some of the pieces and then resurfacing, seal coating it, filling the cracks, and then restriping the lot. Would be they also want to purchase as their match and install additional security cameras. They have had there's a feeling that they've had some folks that are visiting the site to visit with the women and not necessarily following procedure, and they want to increase that security at that facility. So they are proposing that part as their match, as part of in addition to some other costs there. So our recommendation is to fund it at this time. I don't think it quite meets that standard. We're saying that we're expanding the services in the county, but I do think it's an asset within the county for our service provision, that maybe that's something that the tax board would consider to do.
Again, I'm always on board with Brighton, so I have no issues with this one.
Suki, do you have any thoughts?
Always I have many thoughts. I would love to consider this application to be funded, and I see the need of it, safety reasons, and also most of them that they serve is a woman also. That's what I'm reading here as a kind of evidence here. I think it's really a good investment for the program to be stronger. And I see that this will lead to the further expansion of a little more programmatic expansion to it. It's a lot of traffic. I see that here. So yeah, needed to be fixed in that place. That's what I see.
All right, my dislike for not even kind of ending numbers. Would you all have a lot of heartburn if we said 28,500? I mean, 250 off. Would you guys be okay with that?
No, that's perfect.
Yeah,
right. I know it seems random, but when we're tracking things, it just makes it easier. It's really when I make the addition and take it to the fiscal court, if I don't do it this way, then my number adds up to be something else. I'll be like, that's not right. Something's wrong. Because I would not have it a not weird number. I thank you both. I agree with that. I think it's a good, strong program. And Suki, when things are better with COVID, I highly recommend you getting out there to see all of you if you want to. I'm sure it would take you out, but with your work with Dr. Hardcastle, you might really appreciate what they do there and walking through that program.
They have a really good reputation, and philanthropy at NKU, Mayerson teaching that I used to do that. So Brighton is always my student top list. So that's a
You
good
know,
problem. We have it. We have a good problem. Yeah. And the
that's what I keep
addictions.
saying
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brighton
We
is
keep
a
saying
top
this.
list.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say it's a problem, but it's like, you know, we're overseeing these different funds, the programmatic, we got the capital ones now, and we got some early childhood funds, and Brighton Center keeps getting funded and all these different, and then with some other work that I'm doing with an ASAP board, we got some funding. I finally said to Dylan, I recommended not funding something to Brighton Center, just wanted that down on record, because everything that their proposals are always fantastic. You know, the product, their reputation within the community is always, and what they do is, it's fantastic. So it's really hard not to say yes if it's a good proposal.
I just think they're so forward thinking, you know, that they always come through with what the community needs.
Mm-hmm.
So
collaborating with agencies and the people, and that's so great and strong, and very innovative too. And also never lose the enthusiasm. Forward thinking, that's the word that I was looking for. Yes, they do great work, and we want to see more. And I think this is, again, it's a good investment, and I'm glad that they put that in sustainability of a project, because we always wanted to maintain and expand in the future. So I see the quality of it. I think this is good proposal.
Well, I appreciate all of your time today. Let's do a quick recap of where we're at. And Dylan, you can tell us the grand total at the end. Is that okay? So I have here on my list that the Brighton Center, I'm going to go in opposite order of what we talked about earlier. Brighton Center, the Recovery Center van at $25,500. Brighton Properties, repairs to the Right Recovery Center at $28,500. Children's Home in Northern Kentucky, Burlington campus repairs, $0, and we'll pull together that information and share it with you all. Florence Christian, their shower ministry expansion at a full funding of $181,000. And CAC's Maplewood purchase project at $100,000 for a total of $335,000. And so that's about $30,000 over what we budgeted for this year, but I think that's well within what I've been told from administration that we could consider for the fiscal court proposal. So
awesome.
If this sounds okay to you all?
Yep.
You all agree?
Sounds great.
Fantastic.
Right.
I appreciate everybody's time so much, and doing double duty this spring. We're going to bring you back in May, I know, to see us again when we get there to go over those pieces. And so we'll do this again in a couple of months.
Are we doing in person in May, or are we doing Zoom again?
I think we're doing Zoom at this time. If anything changes, we'll let you know. But I think we're doing Zoom, so just to meet everybody's needs and go from there.
Okay.
But hopefully we'll be in person here soon. Any questions or anything? All right. If you think of anything, please let me know. I am so happy we got to meet with you all today. I think we're going to make a lot of organizations really happy with these recommendations. As a recap, we'll take these to the fiscal court on April 13th for their final approval, and then the funds could be available as early as April 15th. All of this, as a reminder, is reimbursement based. We don't ever fund anything out ahead of time. So if for some reason they don't spend it, we retain the funds. And so that's what happened with our first round a couple times. A couple agencies didn't spend their money. So
and about because the proposal, because I like to see the outcome of it too, is that normally do you see the report that when the agency is submitting, or it's not just completely outside of our committee role?
No. So what I've tried to do, so admittedly, we're kind of all over so far with the capital funds, whereas we pulled together our first group of applicants. It really had somebody from ID, it's had some applications from aging and mental health. So I tried to pull together one of everybody. So reporting out to that group was not going to be so easy, because it's a couple of those members wouldn't be there, but this group will be easier. So I can report out to you all. And I have shared the fiscal court pictures of repairs. What we'll do, maybe I'll try to get those out to you all too for the first round. So we've got pictures from CAC, which is also, I should say CAC has also been the recipient of funds, Brighton Properties, and oh my gosh, the senior Arcadia, not Arcadia, Panorama. in Florence that received funds our first round. We do have some photos of those projects we can share with you all for that piece of it. So I haven't got anything for this round yet. Most of that was, we haven't done any billing or anything. So the second round, but we could share that first round with you all.
Please excuse me. I have a lot of curiosities and
No, not at all. We're learning. We're learning as we go through this process and how we do it, and we're taking direction from you all. And we want to help inform your decisions and make those processes make sense, and that they're transparent. And we want to provide as much feedback as possible too.
Well, and thank you to both of you for preparing everything to make it easier for us, and Dylan for your work and going out there and taking pictures. That's really helpful for me to actually see it and understand it. That's really helpful.
For sure. Yes. We try our best to give you guys good info. I will say Laura did take the pictures, so I will not take credit for her photography. But
or the blame for the photography skills. Yeah.
But yes, I think
thank you.
We work well as a team.
Great.
Well, have a great rest of your afternoon. We really appreciate it. If anybody's celebrating Easter this weekend, happy Easter or Passover. And we hope to see you all soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.